Good morning. My name is Brianna Wright. I am the Executive Director of ASA Houston Chapter, and I am pleased to welcome everyone today to our Commitment to Safety recipient recognition and our Safety Emergency Preparedness, which will be presented by Cindy Lewis, Director of Gulf Coast Safety Institute. Also with us today, we have Cesar Garcia from MEMCO, who is our Safety and Health Chairman. I'd like to thank our meeting sponsors today, Andrews Myers and Cherokee Piping Company. Part of today's presentation is to recognize the recipients of our Commitment to Safety program. Our CTS program recognizes contractors with exemplary safety and health programs. Additionally, it assists specialty contractors with continuous progress in the area of employee safety. On September 3rd, we awarded 18 of our member companies the highest level that we have, the gold member for Commitment to Safety program. I'd like to shout out and give congratulations to Big City Access Holdings, Camerata Masonry Systems, Chamberlain Roofing and Waterproofing, Fast Track Specialties, GMI, ISIC Incorporated, J. Maley Incorporated, Karsten Interior Services, Kenmore Electric, Kilgore Industries, Merrick, MEMCO, Milestone Metals, Network Cabling Services, Piper Houston Electric, Slack & Co. Contracting, TAS Commercial Concrete Construction, and Texas Moisture Protection. If you need assistance in developing or implementing your safety program, ASA Safety and Health Committee would be happy to assist. Contact the chapter for details, and we will put you in contact with the appropriate people. With that, we're going to get into our Safety Emergency Preparedness presentation by Cindy Lewis. Cindy Lewis is Director of the Gulf Coast Safety Institute, College of the Mainland in Texas City, Texas. As Director, Lewis oversees the Centers of Excellence with the Institute and is an OSHA Challenge Program Administrator. She is also the owner of Creative Safety Solutions in Dickinson, Texas, a safety and health consulting firm to small businesses. Lewis has more than 20 years experience in safety, occupational health, and industrial hygiene. Prior to starting her current position, she was an industrial hygienist for KBR and a safety and health manager for Cooper Energy Services and Anheuser-Busch. She holds a BS in chemistry from McMurray College in Jacksonville, Illinois, where she was named the 2012 Distinguished Alumni Career Award winner, and an MS in Environmental and Occupational Health Sciences from the University of Illinois, Chicago, where she was a NIOSH trainee. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Cindy for our presentation.
Thank you, Brianna. Oh, let me make sure I've got the wrong screen here. Always happens. I apologize. This is not working right now.
Not a problem. If there's not at least one technical glitch online, all right, let you have.
All right. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. You know, September each year is FEMA's National Preparedness Month. And this year, it seems even more important that we think about preparedness. In the news recently, you know, we've had so many different types of events. You can call them disasters, you can call them craziness, you can call it just 2020. But this year, we definitely need to be thinking about what can happen. So my presentation today is just kind of to help you understand what National Preparedness Month is and what the focus is, especially for this year. So as it says on the slide, are you ready? Because if you're not, we're going to hopefully help you get there. So when we think about emergencies or disasters, and especially in our area, these are probably some of the things that you might think of right off the bat. You know, severe weather, hurricanes, we've just gone through here in the Gulf Coast area. You know, it's hurricane season. We've got, I think, 4 storms out there right now that we're still tracking. It's an active time for us. You know, things like extreme heat. Again, we're in Houston, so we've got the heat. You know, luckily we've had a little bit of a cool front come through, not much, but still we're looking at extreme heat. You know, things like Explosions. We live in a very petrochem focused area. So it's very likely that we could, hopefully not, but that we could have things like explosions going on. And then typically, home fires, power outages, thunderstorms, floods, those are more severe weather types of things that we experience very often. And unfortunately, we have come to talk a lot about in the last 15, 20 years about active shooters, and we have to have that. And now this year, of course, pandemic has become the new phrase, the new word. And even though pandemics have been around for a while, it's just become the reality of 2020 and even late 2019 that we are now, that's more part of our everyday vernacular where it used to not be so much. But there are other things that we need to take into consideration that many of us don't even think about because of either the area we live in or that we've never had any kind of experience with it before. And so if you look at the FEMA page, these are all the different things that they actually recommend that we think about. And if you look at some of these, there's a whole list here. Wildfires, that is actually in the news right now. Everywhere from Colorado to California and from New Mexico and Arizona up to Washington and Oregon. We are having a lot of issues right now with that. But these are things that not just for work, but also for home that we need to be thinking about and we need to be getting our families prepared for. So this is what I want to focus on for the next couple of slides, is to talk about, well, how do we get prepared? What do we do? So first of all, we're going to make a plan. That's always, so if you're looking at it from your work position, a lot of times we talk about fire plans or emergency evacuation plans, and that's one type of plan. But if you go to ready.gov, there's a whole list of ways that you can prepare. And when I say a whole list of ways, that's really talking about all these different types of emergencies. So first thing you have to do is you have to plan ahead. And so you have to get your little crystal ball out and you have to think about what are the types of emergencies that could happen. And I'll emphasize on the word could, because, a lot of us never really thought about a pandemic happening. It was something that we read in a book. It was something that somebody made up and we didn't think it could happen to us. Well, now we're living. So we have to think about those things that could happen both at home and at work. And if you're looking at work, you sit down and you think about what are the most likely scenarios for my workplace, and not just with what you have control over or may not have control over in your workplace, but the surrounding area. For example, when I mentioned the fact that we live in a very high petrochem area, so your business may be next to or fairly close to one of those petrochem facilities. And while your workplace may not have a lot of chemicals in the facility, you have to think about, well, what if there was a release or an explosion from the plant down the street? How would your facility react? Do you have a shelter in place plan? Do you have something that the employees would know what to do or where to get information? So that's the main thing. And then at home, it's the same type of scenario, not just with yourself, your entire family, but then also having a communication plan with your extended family. How are you going to let them know that you're okay? So your plan ahead is to sit down and to think about all these scenarios and almost to have like a little written plan for each one of those individual scenarios. And that's a lot of work. So when do you make a plan? Now. Do it now. It, just like the other day when we had the Hurricane Laura coming in, I thought it was very interesting to read my neighborhood Facebook page about what was going on. And there were a lot of folks that said, oh, I have storm shutters, but guess what? I have no way of putting them up. Does anybody know where I can go and get either the little wing nuts or can I go get the poly locks? Something of that nature. But they were waiting till the day they needed to put them up rather than to have all that stuff ahead of time, right? And that's part of your building your kit too. Building your kit, you've got to think about all of those pieces and the fact that not every kit is going to be the same for every scenario. And lastly, drill. And I'm going to go into these a little bit more in detail, but your drills, you're going to have drills for each of those different types of scenarios. And part of your drill means setting up your communication plan with your work folks and with your family. So if we talk first about plan ahead in a little more detail. So the first thing you need to think about is, how am I going to receive emergency alerts and warnings? Well, on a daily basis, we have the news, we have Twitter and Facebook and all kinds of news outlets that carry these emergency alerts and these warnings. But stop to think for a second. If one of those systems fails, what's your backup plan? How are you going to get that information? And it's just not how are you going to receive it to make your informed decisions, but how are you going to make sure your family, your friends, your coworkers are all going to get that same information? So for workplace, there's a lot of different ways that you can set up your own internal emergency alert situation. If you don't want employees to come into the office because something's going on at your workplace, then there's always email. There are instant messages services. There are different kinds of text messaging services. There are a ton of apps out there now that you can actually put together your own little distribution list. I work at the College of the Mainland. We use a thing called Blackboard. And so it's set up with all of our students, all of our faculty and staff, and all our emergency management coordinator has to do is hit one button and it goes out multiple ways to all of our different folks. So think about that. Think about your workplace. How am I going to get information not only before the situation as it's developing and you're needing to communicate to employees about what's going on, but what about after? So again, do you have some kind of a phone tree, or do you have some kind of a service where you can get information out? If you need employees to stay away for a long period of time, think of with COVID, with shutdowns, as things we started having some employees come back in cycles for different industries or different parts of our industry. You may have had your essential workers out in the field, but maybe your office staff needed to stay home and work from home. Well, how do you let them know when it's time to come back or what the phase-in is, right? So think about that. And then for your family, text messaging, you have to think about too, if our electricity goes down, or sometimes the cell towers get so inundated. A lot of times FEMA, for example, or the Red Cross during an emergency, they'll set up websites so that if you can get to a shelter, that you can actually get a message out to just a post that says, I'm safe. Facebook pages now, it seems like they'll have a check-in. I noticed after Hurricane Laura that there was a check-in for the Lake Charles area just so that people could say, I'm safe, I'm okay. So you have to think, that's the first thing you have to think about in your plan ahead. What's your shelter plan? So this goes kind of a different situation. So you have to think about, well, am I gonna have to, in these types of emergencies, am I gonna have to stay in place? Or am I gonna have to evacuate? Am I gonna have to get somewhere else safe? And what is that plan, right? So if you're talking about something like a tornado, right, you're not going to be evacuating, you're gonna have to shelter in your home. Well, what's the best place in your home? How are you going to do that? There are a lot of times we see in tornadoes, they'll tell you to get to the most inner place or to get to a bathroom. But then if you can, to get a mattress and put over yourself and your family. What about, how do you do that at work? Where's the shelter place at work? Same for a chemical release, a shelter in place. Some of the things you have to think about there are, how do I shut off the AC? Because I don't want air being brought in from the outside if it's not good air. So where is the shut off? Who's going to shut it off? How do I know that it's shut off and we are sheltered in place correctly? And then the opposite is the evacuation, where you have to get out. Well, for work, where are you going to go to? Where is your muster point? Where is your point where everybody's going to know that they got to, and we know everybody got there safely? At home, a lot of times with home fires, we talk about evacuation plans. And if you're, depending on the way your house is set up, and if you have fenced in backyard, or you have, you're kind of in the middle of the subdivision and you can't really go over a fence, what are your evacuation plans? And where is your family all going to meet to let everybody know that they're safe so that they don't have to get the emergency responders to go in and look for anyone? We talk a lot about evacuation plans more from a standpoint of hurricanes these days, or at least in our area. But you have to think about all these different types of scenarios, all these different types of disasters, potential disasters. What are the different evacuation plans? And lastly, what's the communication plan with family and work? And we talked a little bit about that with the first one, but definitely make sure that people know which way you're going to communicate, so that way they're not looking for a text message when you're going to do something through email or vice versa. What is your communication plan? And not just your immediate family and your work family, what about your extended family? For example, I have quite a few friends in California right now, checking in on them and making sure that, are you safe? Are you in the area where the wildfire is at? Are you having to evacuate? I got a text message the other day from a friend of mine in the middle of the night. He and his family were evacuated because of the wildfires. So he made a plan to let all of his extended family, his friends, know that he was safe and he and his family were safe. So definitely need to plan ahead. Do you need to go as far as writing it down? Depends, right? Well, in your work scenario, yes. Some of this is covered under OSHA, with your emergency plans. For your family, well, it can't be a bad thing either to sit down and at least write out some bullet points of what we're going to do in these different situations. And especially if you have young children, that may be something that they can refer back to, or pictures. And we're not trying to scare them, but we are trying to make sure that they understand that you've planned ahead, and you can do it in such a way to say, hey, look, we're just making sure that everybody's safe. We're just making sure that we all know what to do so that we don't get scared when it happens. So then you have to think about building your kits, right? So what does a kit look like? Well, as I talked about, each type of emergency may need special items or tools. The things that they tell us to have for a hurricane, 3 to 7 days worth of water and food, and a gallon of water per day per person. And my last bullet there, your pets. Don't forget your pets, right? If you've got Fidos and kitty cats, and even if you've got hamsters and guinea pigs, and these days we have so many different exotic animals at home, what about them? What kind of a kit do you need to build for them, whether it's for stay in place or for evacuation? Think about the different tools and items you might need. I mean, unfortunately, we're not going through things like the wildfires, but they need shovels to hopefully dig some trenches, or to maybe throw some dirt on some small fires that come around. So thinking about those types of things. So when we talk about the different types of kits that you need, definitely think of your hurricane evacuation kit, and then think about what I need for a home fire or for a work fire. Maybe do you have a fire extinguisher in your house, especially for kitchens, right? Kitchen fires, unfortunately, are one of those things that happen quite often. Do you have a K extinguisher in your kitchen? That's a type of kit that we would need to look for. And again, don't forget to prepare your pets. One of the things that you need to think about is, do they have prescription medications? Same thing for the humans, right? So do they have prescription medications? Do you have food and water for them? Do you have some way to keep them safe if you have to leave them? Do you have a crate or a kennel, a harness? And make sure you have their medical. A lot of the shelters will not let you bring your pet into a shelter if you don't have a kennel and you cannot provide their vaccinations are up to date. So just make sure your kit looks at every single member of your family and that you have something for it. Kits for work are going to look a little bit different because you're going to have the items, or a bigger area for storage, hopefully, for those items or different types of kits that you need. But at home, you might have some space and or have some less space, and you might have to think about, how many kits do I need? Or can I have one kit and then little segments of it that I'm going to pull out, almost like little to-go bags for each individual different type of scenario, right? And lastly, drill. And with that, I would say drill now, do it now, and do it for each type of emergency. The reason we have people drill, both at work and at home, it's muscle memory. If you've gone through something, you have the ability to remember it a lot better about what I do when it really happens. So when that adrenaline kicks in and you're a little bit frazzled, you don't have to stop and think, what did I do? Your body and your mind is going to know better about how to do it. And this is so important if you've got little ones at home, because then they're going to not get as frantic. A lot of times we see kids, especially if they've gone through drills, they almost become the leaders. They can tell the parents if the parents, or they can help a sibling, or they can help an older family member because they know what to do. So don't forget to do the drills for all the different types of scenarios. And think about if you were, when you were in school, at least I know I did. I grew up in the corn belt up in Illinois, and we drilled all the time on tornadoes, getting under our desk, hiding, putting our hands over our heads. We drilled for fires when we were little. You know, going outside and knowing where to go so the teacher could count on everybody. So kids are used to that. And it's a good thing to do it at home too. At work, definitely. And do the different types of drills. The one thing that we do in the OSHA Challenge program when we talk about drills is making sure that people do practice evacuation drills. It's easy to do at tabletop. It's easy to sit around and say, oh yeah, this is what we do and here's where we go. But if you have new employees or if you have visitors to your site, they've not been part of that tabletop drill or they've not been part of that discussion, you need to make sure people physically know where to go to be accounted for and to be told that they're, that they're in a safe area, right? So do it for each type of emergency, do it now, and repeat. So every 6 months at the very least, once a year, if we're talking about your home, or if something changes. So if you've changed some kind of construction at your workplace, or you've done something different at your house, or maybe you have new family members staying with you, or extended times where friends are going to be there, you might want to just tell them, depending on scenario, depending on time of year, right? If you've got folks coming this time of year, they might need to know what's going on if something were to happen with a hurricane, how we're all going to get out and where we're going to go. So for this month, as we said, it's every September, FEMA has this National Preparedness Month. And so we're in week 2, but it's not too late. So week 1 was make a plan. And the reason, we'll put back up the ready.gov, or talk about ready.gov. If you go to that website, it has all of these information on it. And when you click on those links, it'll tell you in much more detail and even give you some examples of some of the things you can do to make a plan, build a kit, how to prepare for disasters. And you see that week 4, the week of the 20th through the 26th, is to teach youth about preparedness. That's not only helps them to get prepared so that the parents don't have to worry about them, but it also sets up our next generation so that they get into this preparedness mode. And they get into the idea of, we don't wait for something to happen, we're going to prepare for it ahead of time. So with that, that's my presentation, and I appreciate your time today. Turn it back over to Caesar.
And we're back. Thank you, Cindy, for that very informative and knowledgeable presentation. We really appreciate the time that you put into it. And again, just want to make sure that the people, who are looking at this know where to go to find all these resources, and they can all be found at ready.gov, correct?
Correct.
And I'm assuming professionals put in their time and effort to put all this together, so it's a trustworthy, obviously reliable website.
Well, remember, it's by FEMA. So FEMA is a governmental agency, so it's our tax dollars at work. So definitely the professionals, and there's a lot of resources there that I would encourage people to use.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you.